Today we are going to talk about multiplying and dividing by powers of 10, but we are going to do so with exponents. So first let's go over exponential form. When we write a number in exponential form, we are writing it with a base and an exponent. This exponent is this little number up here. It's up in the top right corner next to your number, and it tells you how many times your base is going to be multiplied. So we've got a base of 10, so that is the number that's going to be multiplied. And then the exponent tells us how many times we are going to multiply it. So in this case, we've got our 10, and we multiply it 4 times. So we would multiply 10 times 10. The answer to that times 10. The answer to that times one more 10, giving us our final answer. In this case, 10,000. So let's get started. When we are multiplying by the powers of 10, last lesson we practiced writing out our numbers all the way. What's nice about exponent form is it's a lot shorter and a lot quicker, especially as our numbers start to get larger. So when we have 10, 10 is 10, and that tells us 10 to the power of 1, or 10 to the first power. When I have two 10s, 10 multiplied by 10, we know is 100. 10 times 10 is 100. That means that I have two 10s, 10 to the power of 2. Two 10s. I can also notice here that I have two zeros, and an exponent of 2. Down here, I've got 10 times 10 times 10. So that's 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times 10 gets me 1,000. Taking this and shifting it to, instead of 10 times 10 times 10, I've got 10 to the power of 3, or 10 to the third power. Again, I can notice my 3 zeros and my 3 exponent. It continues down when I've got 4 10s. Multiplied together, that gets me 10,000, but I can simplify it down to 10 to the fourth power. And then same with 5s, and it continues on, so on and so forth. We are going to continue doing the same thing we did in the last lesson when we multiply, and our decimal movement depends on the number of zeros or the exponents. Today we'll focus on the exponents. So down here, we are going to solve the problems and notice our patterns. Just like before, when I read my problem, 8 and 2/10 times 10 to the first power, I am going to go ahead and multiply my symbol because that tells me the direction that my decimal is going to move. I go ahead and write out my number here, and because I have 10 to the 10 to the power of 1, 10 to the power of 1, that means I'm multiplying it by 10. Therefore, I move to the right 1 spot, giving me 82. Moving on to the second one, I've got multiplication again, but this time I've got to the second power. That means I move my decimal to the right because of the multiplication, 2 times because of the exponent. I've got a blank space here. I cannot leave it blank, so I use a 0. I can put a decimal here afterwards or not. Choice is yours. These are whole numbers, 82 and 820, so I don't need the decimal at the end, but I can put it there. All right, next one we've got times 10 to the power of 3. So I go ahead and rewrite it. I move my decimal to the right because of my multiplication, and I move it 3 times because I'm multiplying by 10 to the power of 3, which is 1,000. 1, 2, 3. I've got 2 zeros here. 8,200. Same thing with division, except this time I move my decimal to the left. So I am dividing. I move my decimal to the left because of division 1 time. That gets me 0 and 82 hundredths. Remember that I do put my decimal in front of the 8, and because I do that so I don't lose my decimal, I do put a 0 there. My next one I divide as well, and this time I divide by the 10 to the power of 2, which means 100, meaning I move my decimal 2 times. Getting me 82 thousandths. Last one in this top section, I go ahead and divide again, this time by 10 to the power of 3. That 3 tells me to move my decimal 1, 2, 3 times, getting me 2 zeros, 82 ten thousandths. All right, so looking down to the bottom, we need to remember the rules for cases like this when they are not in nice patterns like they were up above. So 8 and 14 hundredths, I'm dividing by 10 to the power of 2. This right here tells me I'm moving to the left to make my number smaller. And this right here tells me that I'm going to move my decimal twice. 1, 2. I need to go ahead and place my decimal 1, 0 and rewrite my number in exact order. I place a 0 in front to not lose my decimal. Moving on, I've got my multiplication by 10 to the power of 1, 65. My decimal here is after my 5. I don't have a decimal anywhere, so that is where it is. In a whole number, your decimal won't always be written, but it'll be immediately after the number that you do have. I move to the right for multiplication, and I move once because of the power, 10 to the power of 1. I rewrite it, 650. Final 2, we go down here and we're multiplying again. Power of 6. We didn't go over that up at the top, but we know what the pattern is. I know that I'm multiplying, so I'm moving my decimal to the right. I also know that the exponent here tells me how many times to move my decimal. Therefore, I know I'm going to move my decimals to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I go ahead and rewrite 29 and notice that I need 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros to get my final answer. Last one here, we are dividing 4 and 6/10 by 10 to the power of 3. I go ahead and rewrite my number and I move my decimal to the left 3 times, getting me a total of 46 ten thousandths.